She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, and she kissed him like the world was ending. 3 weeks later, standing in the doorway of a locked room, the Duke of Ashford found her again and wished he hadn't. The Cavendish ball had been precisely what Edmund Blackwell expected. A gallery of silk and small talk, the usual parade of eligible daughters steered toward him like ships into harbor. He had perfected the art of polite retreat. A nod here, a compliment there, a timely exit to the terrace. That was where he saw her, standing alone at the far end of the stone balustrade, her fingers resting on the railing. She wore a deep green gown, not the pale pastels the débutantes favored, and her dark hair was pinned loosely, a few strands already escaping. She was not trying to be noticed. That is exactly why he noticed her.
You look like you're planning an escape.
She turned. Her eyes, dark and steady and unimpressed, measured him in a single glance.
And you look like you have already made one.
He laughed. Not the careful laugh he offered in drawing rooms, but a real one startled out of him before he could stop it. She held his gaze a beat longer than courtesy allowed, and the corner of her mouth softened. They talked for an hour. She asked him whether he thought the stars looked different from different parts of England, and he found himself answering honestly that he had never considered it. But now he would. She never asked about his title. She never asked about his estate. The kiss happened in the garden below the terrace. She initiated it. Her hand on his collar, pulling him down gently, and then her mouth against his warm, deliberate, and impossibly sad. A goodbye to a thing she had not yet been given.
When can I see you again?
She stepped back. Her fingers lingered on his chest, then dropped.
You cannot.
She walked away through the garden gate. He watched her disappear into the dark. By the time he asked the hostess her name, no one could quite remember who she had come with. A companion to the Hathaway girl, they thought. A relation, perhaps. Nobody important. She vanished from London the next morning. What Edmund did not know, and would not learn until much later, was that Clara had never been meant to attend that ball. Lady Hathaway had arranged a quiet introduction to a widowed clergyman in the country, a man old enough and dull enough to take Clara off her hands without questions. The ball was a stop along the way, not a gift. But the clergyman had cancelled at the last minute, and Lady Hathaway, unwilling to leave Clara unsupervised with the servants, had dragged her along with strict orders to speak to no one. Clara had spoken to a duke instead. 3 weeks later, Edmund's carriage pulled through the iron gates of Hathaway Hall. The estate sat heavily on the Dorset countryside, gray stone, tall windows, ivy climbing the walls like a living thing trying to leave. He was there to finalize what his family had arranged, a marriage to Miss Caroline Hathaway, eldest daughter of Lord Hathaway. A sensible match. Her family had land and lineage. He had a title that needed an heir. Love had not been part of the negotiation, and Edmund had not expected it. Lord and Lady Hathaway greeted him in the entrance hall with warmth that had been rehearsed. Caroline curtsied, a composed young woman with light brown hair and a careful smile. She was pleasant, polished, and when she spoke, she weighed each word before releasing it. Edmund noticed 2 things on that first evening. The first was that every servant in the house moved without sound, trained into silence. The second was the east wing. It stood at the end of a long corridor, behind a door that was always locked. When he asked about it casually at dinner, Lady Hathaway's fork paused mid-air, and she dismissed it as storage, old furniture, nothing of interest. Lord Hathaway changed the subject to horses. That night Edmund lay awake. The room they had given him was large, cold, and directly above the main hall. Through the floor, he could hear Lord and Lady Hathaway speaking in low, urgent tones, a house keeping a secret it could barely hold. He walked the corridor before breakfast. The east wing door was heavy oak, older than the rest of the house. A vase of fresh wildflowers sat on the table beside it, the kind you pick yourself, not the kind a gardener arranges. He touched one of the stems, still wet. Flowers left for a person no one was supposed to know existed. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from right now? And if you are enjoying this story, a like, a comment, any small interaction helps show YouTube that this is content worth sharing. Now back to Hathaway Hall. The second evening, Edmund could not sleep. He paced the corridor, telling himself he was simply restless. The house was silent, the kind of silence that watches. And then he heard it. A piano, faint, drifting from behind the east wing door. Not a scale or an exercise, but a melody, slow and deliberate, played by a woman who was not performing for anyone. A private conversation between her and the only instrument that would listen. He tried the door. Locked. He tried again, harder. The music stopped. He leaned close to the wood.
Hello?
Nothing.
I heard you playing. I will not tell anyone.
A long pause, then. From the other side, a voice that went through him like a blade.
Go away.
Edmund's breath caught. He knew that voice. He had replayed it in his mind every night for 3 weeks. The cadence of it, the steadiness, the slight roughness underneath. It was her. The woman from the garden, the woman who kissed him and vanished. He should have walked away. He should have gone back to his room, married Caroline Hathaway, and lived the life that was expected of him. Later, he would think about this exact moment and wish, with a sharpness worse than regret, that he had simply gone to bed. He did not. It took him 20 minutes to find the key. The household kept everything locked and ordered. He tried the butler's pantry first, then the linen store, then a cabinet in the housekeeper's sitting room that required prying the latch with a letter opener. The east wing key was at the bottom of a leather pouch, old and heavy. He tried it. The lock resisted, then gave. The room was small. A single lamp, a narrow bed. A piano pushed against the far wall, and standing beside it, her arms wrapped around herself, Clara. The green gown from the ball was gone. She wore a plain gray dress, her hair loose and unpinned, but those same dark, steady eyes found his, and he watched the recognition move across her face. She flinched.
You should not be here.
And you should.
Her jaw tightened.
If they find you here, it will be worse. For both of us.
Who locked you in this room?
The same people you are having dinner with.
Edmund felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Not surprise. He had suspected from the first evening. But hearing it confirmed from her mouth in this room was the difference between seeing smoke and standing in the fire. She told him in pieces, carefully, one shard at a time. Her mother had been a seamstress in the village. Lord Hathaway had loved her, or said he did, for 2 years. When Clara was born, he brought her into the house as a ward, a charitable act, everyone said. She was raised alongside Caroline, dressed in the same fabrics, taught by the same governess. For 16 years, she was almost a Hathaway. Almost was the cruelest word in the English language.
When I turned 18, things changed. The young men who visited began looking at me instead of Caroline. Lady Hathaway noticed.
She said it without self-pity. A fact delivered flat.
First, they stopped inviting me to dinners, then to walks. Then the room got smaller.
How long have you been in here?
5 months.
5 months. Edmund took in the narrow bed, the lamp, the piano that was probably the only reason she had not lost her mind. 5 months hidden away because she was too beautiful and the wrong daughter needed to be seen first.
The ball. In London.
Lady Hathaway had found a widowed clergyman willing to take me without a dowry. The ball was a stop along the way, not a gift. She brought me because she could not leave me here alone with the servants. The clergyman cancelled. I was supposed to sit in a corner and be invisible.
Clara's mouth twisted, caught between a smile and grief.
I was not invisible.
No, she had kissed a duke in a garden and meant every second of it. Edmund came back the next night. He brought candles, because her lamp threw more shadow than light. He brought bread and cold meat from the kitchen, because she was thinner than she had been at the ball. They sat on the floor of her room with the piano at their backs, talking the way two people talk when the walls might be listening, quietly, urgently, close enough to touch.
Play for me.
She hesitated. Then she rose, sat at the piano, and played softly enough that the sound would not carry. A slow, wandering piece he did not recognize, a melody searching for a safe place to land. He watched her at the keys, her posture steady, her breathing even, transformed into a version of herself that this room could not reach. When she finished, she kept her fingers on the ivory.
My mother used to say that music was the only door they could not lock.
Edmund felt his throat close. He said nothing. He did not need to. The next night, he came again, and the night after, he brought a book of poetry because she had mentioned once in the garden a lifetime ago that she liked Tennyson. They read to each other in low voices, passing the volume back and forth, and when their fingers brushed on the spine, neither pulled away.
Come with me. I will break the engagement. We leave in the morning.
Clara shook her head.
And then what? You would be a duke who jilted his fiancée for a base-born girl locked in her family's attic. Your name would be destroyed. Mine does not exist enough to destroy.
I do not care about my name.
You should. Your name is the only thing protecting you. Without it, you are just a man who stole another family's shame.
She was right, and the frustration of it burned. She saw the world with a clarity that came from having been crushed by it, and he could not argue with a truth that had cost her that much to learn. On the fourth night, she reached across the space between them and took his hand. No words, she just held it, and they sat like that until the candle burned to nothing. On the fifth night, he kissed her. His palm against her cheek, her breath catching, and this kiss was different from the one in the garden, less desperate, more deliberate. A promise instead of a goodbye. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, and what he saw there frightened him. She had already imagined a life with him, imagining it was the most dangerous thing she had ever done.
You are making this harder.
I know.
For both of us.
I know that too.
On the sixth night, Lady Hathaway was waiting for him in the corridor. She stood perfectly still, a candle in one hand, her jaw clenched beneath a mask of composure, and with cold formality she told him she could see he had discovered their private family matter. Edmund held her gaze. He had been expecting this, perhaps not this evening, but eventually.
Family matter. Is that what you call locking a young woman in a room for 5 months?
Lady Hathaway's mask slipped for a breath, but only for a breath. She insisted that Clara was cared for, fed, clothed, and kept from a world that would have offered her nothing but disappointment. She called it protection.
Protection for whom?
She stepped closer and dropped her voice, making the threat plain. If he broke the engagement, they would not suffer quietly. They would say Clara had approached him, that she had been alone in a locked room with a man who was not her husband, and that whatever reputation she had left would not survive it. It was not a warning. It was a threat. If he chose Clara, they would destroy her to save themselves. He told Clara everything. She listened without interrupting, her body rigid, her face still. When he finished, the silence lasted long enough for the candle flame to bend and straighten twice.
Then marry her.
You cannot ask me to do that.
I am not asking. I am telling you, marry Caroline. Be a good husband. Give her what this family promised her.
And you?
I have survived 5 months in this room. I can survive a lifetime.
She said it evenly, but a tremor ran through her shoulders, the one fracture she could not hide, the single tell that betrayed everything her voice refused to show.
I will not leave you here.
You must.
She turned away, faced the piano, pressed one key, a single note that hung in the air between them like an unfinished sentence.
Please go.
He went, not because he agreed, but because the look on her face told him that if he stayed one more minute, she would break, and he understood, with absolute certainty, that she would never forgive him for witnessing it. He left the door unlocked behind him. The next morning, the east wing stood open. The room was empty. The bed was made, the lamp was cold, the piano lid was closed. On the keys beneath the lid, Clara had left a folded piece of paper. The note told him not to look for her. Clara wrote that she would rather disappear than be the reason he lost everything. Beside the note lay a small cloth purse, empty now, with embroidered initials Edmund recognized at once. Caroline's. He read the note twice. Then he folded it, placed it in his coat, and walked downstairs to the breakfast room where Lord and Lady Hathaway sat with their daughter pretending that nothing had changed. Lady Hathaway's face was tight with relief. She said it seemed their family matter had resolved itself. Edmund sat down. He accepted a cup of tea. He looked at Caroline, who met his gaze with eyes that were quietly horrified but too controlled to say so. He thought about the embroidered purse. He thought about the wildflowers by the east wing door, fresh every morning for 5 months. Caroline had never had the power to free Clara, but she had fed her, left her flowers, and in the end, given her the only thing she could, enough money to run. He set down the cup.
I have to be honest with you, Miss Hathaway.
Caroline went still.
I cannot marry you, not because of any failing of yours, but because I love the woman your family locked in a room to make sure I would never find her.
The silence that followed changed the room. Lady Hathaway's chair scraped back. Lord Hathaway opened his mouth, but Caroline raised one hand, a small, precise gesture, and he stopped. Caroline held Edmund's gaze for a long time. Then, very quietly, she admitted that she knew, that she had always known Clara was the better choice, and that she only wished she had been brave enough to unlock that door herself. She stood, smoothed her skirt, and left without looking back. Edmund's horse covered the 6 miles to the village in less than half an hour. The innkeeper at the coaching house remembered her, a young woman in a gray dress who had asked about the next coach to London. She had been sitting by the window, he said, very still, watching the road with the expression of a person waiting for news she hoped would not arrive. He found her at the edge of the village, walking along the lane with a small bag over her shoulder. She heard the horse and turned, and when she saw who it was, she stopped but did not come closer.
I told you not to look for me.
I read your note. I disagreed.
She stood in the middle of the lane, morning light on her face, and for the first time since the ball she resembled the woman who had kissed him in the garden. Not a prisoner, not a ghost. A woman who had run out of reasons to stay and was waiting, against her own judgment, for a reason to stop walking.
I broke the engagement.
You should not have done that.
Probably not.
Your reputation.
Will survive. I am a duke. Dukes have survived worse than falling in love with the wrong woman.
Clara's eyes filled, but the tears held. She pressed her lips together and looked at the sky and blinked twice, hard, and Edmund waited, because he had learned in those 6 nights by candlelight that she needed space before she could let anyone close.
I have nothing. No name, no dowry, no family that will claim me. I cannot give you anything.
You gave me a kiss at a garden party, and I have not stopped thinking about it for 3 weeks. I would say that is quite a lot.
She laughed, a real laugh, startled and broken and warm, the first one he had ever heard from her. He dismounted. He walked to her. He took her face in his hands the way she had once taken his collar, with the certainty of a man who was done running out of time. And she kissed him, again. In the middle of a Dorset lane, with dust on her shoes and nothing to her name, she kissed the Duke of Ashford, and neither of them wished otherwise. Some people wait their whole lives to be found, and some, once found, spend the rest of their lives wishing they had been brave enough to stay. Clara did not have to wait anymore, and Edmund never once regretted opening that door. If you have stayed with me this far, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Has there ever been a time you found a person who changed everything, and you knew right away that choosing them would make your life harder, not easier, but you stayed anyway? Tell me about it.